If you're sitting on real estate, you've owned it for years, maybe decades, and you're finally thinking about selling, there's a clock that starts ticking the day after that property closes. 45 days to identify where that money goes and 180 days to close on it. And most owners we talk to generally don't know really what all their new modern options are.
That's right. We're going to walk you through it step by step. The piece you have to do before you sell, the fork in the road after you sell, and the part most people haven't heard of, which is rolling the pieces into an institutional real estate program at a firm like Apollo, Blue Owl, Blackstone, and never having to manage another tenant again.
Sounds really good. So let's get into it. So step one happens before you sell. The IRS requires that the proceeds from your property sale never actually touch your hands. So they basically go into something that's called a qualified intermediary, a QI. Just an account. You just have to find a QI administrator to hold that cash once you sell.
Yeah, essentially, it's a third party escrow agent, almost usually a legal firm that holds the money for you. You can think of it kind of like a holding tank while you decide what to do next. If you take the proceeds for yourself, even for a day, you've blown the 1031 exchange. So the whole thing would become taxable.
That's right. So the very first move before sale closes is engaging the QI and getting the paperwork in place. We can help you do that. It's not complicated, but it has to happen first.
Let's go to the fork of the road and your three choices. So once your money is sitting in the QI, you have three real choices. And this is where most owners that we know I don't think they know they had options that they actually have.
Choice one is the traditional path. You go find another investment property and you buy it. You're back to being a landlord. You collect rent, you fix toilets, you re-tenant where leases roll. That's how 1031s have worked for decades, and many of you have done them many, many times.
Choice two, is newer, and frankly, is why we wanted to make this video, because we just think the options in that have really improved. You can really roll the proceeds into a Delaware Statutory Trust, a DST, sponsored by a firm like Blackstone, Blue Owl, Apollo. The DST owns some institutional quality real estate, and you own a beneficial interest in the trust. And the IRS treats that as like kind property.
That's right. And they always have new ones available. And choice three is you can do both. You can take part of the proceeds and you can buy a property that you want to roll it into. And then you can take some of the money and you can roll it into an institutional DST. So you have a lot of options. And you can even take some out as cash and just pay the tax on that portion. So the flexibility is yours as long as you run it through a QI.
So why are we talking about this? Why is this worth understanding?
Yeah, I mean, here's where owners of real estate why they're paying attention to this. I mean, if you've owned the same office building or strip center or apartment complex for 30 years and you're now, 60, 70 years old, the question isn't really about taxes anymore. It's actually like, do I want to keep managing this thing? Do my kids want to manage this thing when they inherit it? Because you want to get that step up, which is why people hold things. This sort of a headache.
Yeah, I mean, the DST, institutional DST, it's passive. You don't get a phone call when the roof leaks. You get monthly income, typically in the 4 to 5% range right now, depending on the program. These are properties that are core, multifamily, industrial, the kind of assets that institutional holders, institutional sponsors are holding for decades. So you're really taking concentration in sort of one or several buildings, and in turn getting diversified exposure to a much larger professionally managed portfolio.
That's right. And there's a structural feature in these programs that's called a 721 UPREIT. And this is what we're really here, UPREIT exchange. And roughly after 2 or 3 years, the DST can convert into an operating partnership unit of a much larger non-traded REIT, right? So now you've gone from owning one building to owning a slice of a DST, which is probably a couple buildings, to owning a multi-billion-dollar diversified real estate portfolio, all while continually deferring your gain.
And so, that is the trade-off. Once you go into this institutional DST that's structured for the 721 UPREIT, you've generally given up the ability to do another 1031 down the road. So for most clients, this would be the last 1031 exchange they do. Now, that's fine. Once you're in one of these, we don't see a reason why you would want to even do an exchange, but it's worth understanding that. So, the off-ramp is liquidity eventually, but on the way out, that gain would be taxable.
One more practical piece a lot of people don't realize is if you have a mortgage on the property that you're selling, the IRS still wants you to invest the full gross sale value, debt and equity together, to fully defer the tax. So historically, if you had $2 million in debt on a $10 million property, you either had to come out of pocket for the $2 million in cash to replace the debt, or you had to pay tax on that $2 million.
Yeah, what's changing now is that, I mean, the institutional sponsors, I mean, they realize this is an issue, so they're now creating their own loans inside these programs that can take out your bank loan. All the major firms are working on these debt replacement features. So instead of you writing a check or eating the tax, the sponsor provides some leverage on the DST that matches your old mortgage. Your bank gets paid off at closing, and then you can stay 100% deferred.
Yeah, I mean, this is really evolving fast and everybody's sort of getting the same features. But the point is, having debt on the property is no longer a deal killer. And even that hurdle is now being sort of fixed. So these are great things. Now, here's the part that a lot of our clients actually is the bigger story. And that's really, this is really a estate planning tool.
Yeah, so if you own one building and you have 4 kids and you pass away, those 4 kids will inherit a single building. And if one of them lives across the country and wants to sell, one wants to manage it, one needs liquidity for tuition, one doesn't speak to the others, that's a real estate family meeting. It's not going to be a fun one.
Yeah, that's right. And instead, if you convert it into a slice of an institutional REIT portfolio, the interest is divisible, right? Each of your 4 kids gets 25%. They can just take whatever product it is, whether it's Blackstone BREIT or Ares Industrial or Blue Owl's triple net lease. Maybe you own all of them, and they can just continue to collect that cash flow, or they can split it up, sell it, do whatever they want with it. But it's really easy. It's on a fidelity statement.
And, I think the big takeaway we'd say is the traditional 1031 exchange. It's an amazing tool, but it's really ideal for the professional in real estate. And what we think is this is really, like many of the things we see, democratizing access to a product and making it much easier. So, again, to recap, before you sell, line up the QI. After you sell, you've got 3 choices. Buy your own, just like you have in the past, go into an institutional DST or do a mix. And if you go the DST route, understand it's likely your last 1031 exchange, but you've traded one building for ultimately a very diversified portfolio, monthly income, and a much cleaner estate.
Yeah, and look, we've talked about we're in AI as a wildfire. So is robotics, and we think the level of disruption we're going to see coming in the next 10 or 20 years, it's not just going to disrupt small businesses, large businesses. It's going to disrupt real estate. Watch our driverless car video. I mean, one needs to think about if this is a large portion of your assets. If you own a warehouse in Miami and it's surrounded by parking lots, the value of that warehouse could be worth less in the future if those parking lots are developed as new warehouses, because you don't need cars. And so I think we need to think about all of these things being broadly diversified, deferring tax, doing the right things from an estate planning perspective, because uncertainty is going to rise. Taxes are probably going up, and this is a terrific way to get institutional level diversification, lower fees, and get out of the real estate game.
Yeah. So we're not here to tell you beforehand which of these options is right for you, but we want you to know the options. And if you're interested in walking through and getting our opinion, we'd love to talk to you. Thanks for taking the time. Please like and subscribe.
Thanks.